Well, folks, Sony's being pressured by their investors over Nintendo Switch 2, which probably isn't surprising considering that Nintendo is now a $100 billion company and creeping closer and closer to the valuation of Sony as a company that's only doing video games. And this is mostly built off the back of 150 million in sales of Switch 2 and all the software sales and the incredible success Nintendo is seeing with the expansion of their IPs with theme parks and movies, and really looking like, hey, they are on a warpath here to be maybe the most successful company in all of video games. Now, Sony has been, riding at the top for quite a while because they always tend to lead the market in terms of total revenue, not necessarily total profits, but total revenue, which makes them one of the biggest, if not the biggest player in the video game space. And Sony has won a majority of the generations since entering the market. So it is very true that Sony is a major player, but so is Nintendo. But now that Switch 2 is setting records again, even faster than Switch was setting records, investors are concerned, which is naturally understanding because they're wondering, hey, is Sony going to do anything to respond to what Nintendo has going on? Sony seems to be mostly standing their ground, but it is interesting to see that there is that concern because we never seem to see these questions come up to Nintendo at their investors meetings. So we got to go over this stuff because, look, this is fueling, obviously, fan wars on the internet. And we're going to go over some fans' responses to this stuff because I do find all of this to be a very interesting conversation as somebody that just wants everyone to be successful. And at the end of the video, we are going to end with a tweet from somebody that does point out that the biggest thing we should really take away from everything is that there are multiple successes on multiple fronts, and a lot of gamers should be feeling pretty happy with their platforms. That being said, folks, I want to remind you we are giving away 5 copies of Donkey Kong Bonanza. If you are looking forward to that game and maybe just don't want to get one for yourself, it could be a physical or digital, depending on the country you're in. We are opening this giveaway worldwide. It'll be digital if it's overseas, physical if it's in the US, should you choose that. You can also get a digital copy instead if you want. Go ahead and enter down below. You just have to be 18 or older. There'll be a link in the pinned comment or in the description. Probably both. All right, let's go ahead and get into this actual story so we have the context of what's going on because this did come from an investors meeting. So Sony talks about how to combat the threat of Nintendo and Switch 2. So let's just read this whole thing because look, context is everything here. The Switch 2 has proved to be an incredible launch for Nintendo with the system breaking records globally. The company's competitors are all watching closely how the system fares after launch, given the success of the original Nintendo Switch console. One such company is Sony, who was asked by investors how they plan to combat the threat of the Nintendo on the PlayStation business. One question was especially succinct, with a question about how they will transition youngsters who grow on Nintendo hardware. Some investors are concerned that the improved specs of Switch 2 and Nintendo's improved relationships with third-party publishers will lead to tougher competition for PlayStation in the next few years. What do you think of these concerns? All right, Hideki Nishino responds and says, we closely monitor the overall gaming industry, including the action of other market participants. Additionally, a catalyst in the market is great for the industry as a whole. As they invigorate excitement, they demand more product, so it's great to have people launching new things. As I mentioned previously, we have a different strategy. PlayStation 5 is designed for immersive gaming experiences, and this includes the innovative DualSense controller features as well. We believe PlayStation 5 level performance is required to achieve a great experience on big screens, and in this way, we have provided a unique offering for players and creators in this current console generation. Publisher strategies are increasingly shifting towards being multi-platform, so more platforms can run the same game, which is great from a creator's perspective. Among those platforms, our mission is that we will continue to be the best place to play and publish. As such, we have empowered our creators to leverage our offerings and the services to create amazing, unique experiences for players with high engagement and great monetization opportunities. We have done this consistently as the industry and competitive dynamics have evolved. PlayStation Studio and our franchises have a special role in showcasing the PlayStation experience and then strengthening the player's relationship to us. In other words, my takeaway from that is mostly, hey, look, they are going to get a lot of the same games that we get. The differentiating factor is we're the most powerful system out there. And so games are just going to look and run better on our system. Of course, while that is true, they also look and run better on PC, which is an argument for PC gaming. So I don't always know that power is the greatest argument there, especially if Switch 2 ends up looking good enough or close enough in a TV environment. But again, yeah, it is an advantage. They have to tout their advantage that we are going to have better looking games, and we do have the DualSense controller, which does provide some stuff that Nintendo doesn't. All right, now some investors are concerned that Nintendo's appeal to the younger generation could lead to market share declines for PlayStation if those younger users choose not to graduate to PlayStation as they age. What is Sony's Interactive doing to increase its addressable market among younger users and its overall mix of users? Hideki Nishino responds and says, the PlayStation brand and offering has resonated with a wide range of players over 3 decades now. The number of users engaged on our platform continue to grow. By supporting such a large number of creators, we are able to provide the largest range of content available, catering to all demographics, geographics, and play styles, etc. We believe that by constantly investing in players' relationship with the brand and our relationship with creators, we will ensure we stay close to all players' hearts through their lifetime. Herman Hulst, haven't heard from him in a while. He now responds and says, on the first-party content side, we are also reaching to a greater range of audiences more directly, including younger players with our first-party lineup, in addition to our franchises with more multi-generational fan bases, such as Marvel Spider-Man. We also have franchises that appeal to a range of different player segments. Horizon's a good example. It's very popular with female players. Astrobot has been a hit with children and adults alike. We continue to drive engagement to PlayStation's ecosystem and brand by bringing franchises to new formats, film, television, and anime. Anime in particular is appealing to key younger audiences, so that's going to be very helpful for us. Now, look, I'm not mad at anything PlayStation is saying here. They're being baited by their investors to basically be like, hey, we need to make a massive response to Nintendo. And their response is, we're pretty much going to do nothing about it. We're basically just acting not concerned. Of course, you know, if Switch 2 goes on to sell significantly more than PlayStation 5 and even the PlayStation 6 when that eventually comes out and continues to be successful, and Nintendo continues to grow while Sony sort of stays where they're at. Now, to be fair, if you look at the 5-year trends, Sony's actually doing really, really well in the stock market. So they're growing as a company overall, and things are pretty healthy for them. It's just pointing out that, you know, the investors are worried that, hey, Nintendo's kind of taking over the market, and it looks like they're doing it again with their new system. And Sony doesn't seem to have anything in place to prevent that from happening. Yeah, PlayStation 5 has a lot more units out there than Switch 2, but it's also been on the market since 2020. The same was true of PlayStation 4, and then Switch ended up skyrocketing past PlayStation 4. So this is one of these situations where I feel like, you know, Sony is just very confident in what they're doing. They think it's going to consistently work, and there should be some confidence from them because, look, whether it was PlayStation 2, 3, 4, or now 5, look, PlayStation 5, it's on its way to be a 100 million seller again. They've only ever had one like PlayStation home console not sell 100 million units, and that was PlayStation 3, which did sell over 80 million units and took second place behind the Wii. So look, yeah, maybe they're not always going to be on top with the most amount of unit sales or the biggest software sales, like, you know, 70 million for Mario Kart's pretty insane. I don't think Sony's going to have any of their first party franchises doing stuff like that. And obviously the profit margins for Nintendo are significantly higher, but I just don't think that Sony views competition in that way. They have talked in the past, so they need to increase their profitability on their software, but in the end, Sony views things very differently than Nintendo. They're very reliant on third-party games, that 30% cut, the microtransaction cut. Sony's just built a little bit differently in how their company functions. They're also doing very well for themselves. So it is fair that investors are concerned, and it is fair that Sony's not really biting into those concerns because they don't really think their market's going anywhere, and they have a pretty strong argument for that. But of course, fans are going to argue. Fans are going to complain. And Video Game Chronicle did an article on this, and we're not really covering the article, but they put up a tweet, and the responses to it I find to be interesting from both sides, both like Nintendo fanboys, Sony fanboys, and everyone in between. We're going to read this stuff for entertainment purposes only. I just want to warn you guys, for entertainment purposes only. We're not trying to get any gotchas on anyone here. We're just having some fun. And then we're going to end with a tweet that I think really encapsulates my true feelings on the whole situation of PlayStation versus Nintendo. Yeah, these are the two titans in the industry right now. So Video Game Chronicle says PlayStation says it isn't concerned about the impact of Switch 2 to have on its platform, and that it believes PS5 level performance is required to achieve a great experience on big screens. Again, This is Video Game Chronicles article. Nintendo God says, how do you make this statement and you're getting your ass destroyed by Nintendo in your home region, Japan? And they just set a worldwide record on you in 4 days. It is notable that while they did destroy PlayStation 2 as the previous launch leader in Japan, they did destroy that record in Japan. Doug Bowser has come out to state that they have more than doubled the sales of Switch in the United States. Does that mean that for launch? So does it mean that it's the best-selling platform ever in the U.S.? I don't know, but obviously Doug Bowser is saying it's a very successful launch. We'll get exact numbers next month from, Circana. They're the new replacement for the MPD that we used to talk about a lot. Anyways, yeah, look, there's obviously some fanboyism getting pushed there. The Steb says, that doesn't undermine people purchasing the Portal from this statement. It's a fair argument. The Portal isn't the same kind of system, but it does take PlayStation games on the go in at least a setting where you have internet. Maybe the PlayStation should do a survey to figure out how many of its users are connected to 24 to 32-inch monitors. People buy it for Fortnite plus Warzone and set it up like a PC. I definitely have seen PlayStation 5s, a lot of them in PC setups. I don't think that it makes up a majority of the people that own PlayStation. I think a majority of them hook it up to like big TVs like the one behind me. But I do see that PlayStation 5 has quickly become sort of a PC adjacent system hooked up to monitors. Again, I see this in a lot of setups. Nothing wrong with this, by the way. People do it with Switch as well. So, hey, this is just something that's becoming common as people kind of consolidate their gaming setup with a PC, a PlayStation, a Switch, and kind of put it all in one area of their home. All right. You could tell a lot of people commenting do not understand the statement. He's simply saying that the hardware they've designed, the PS5, is needed to facilitate the experience they want to deliver to their customers. Switch 2 doesn't change that fact. And why would it? Very good point. PlayStation has a mission. That mission hasn't changed just because Switch 2 is really, really successful, even if investors want Sony to chase that success. Sony made a really bad decision this generation to chase the success of live service games. Sony really shouldn't be making decisions to chase anyone. They need to stick to what they do best. And right now what they're doing best is providing the best home console experience to play games on under your TV. They should keep focusing on that and not try to stray too far from it. Xbox strayed too far from it at times. Obviously, chasing success and like trying to chase the live service games for Sony hasn't gone very well. Stick to what you're really good at and just keep perfecting it. That's what Nintendo's doing with Switch 2, right? They're sticking to what they're good at and they're really perfecting it, and it's leading to huge success. Sony can keep that success going, but I think just continuing to focus on what they're actually best at. So why would they be? Switch came out in 2017, didn't stop the PS4 from remaining successful, didn't stop the PS5 from having a very successful launch. These two devices cater to two different audiences and can exist and be successful simultaneously. I do think that there is something to be said there. They can exist simultaneously. I also think that they are healthy competition to each other, especially if Switch 2 starts to get a lot of the same third-party games that Sony's getting. That's just healthy competition, and people might start making a choice on, do I keep my PS5 or do I just own a PS5 or do I own a Switch 2? I think that's going to be a debate some people start to have, especially with the price point of Switch 2 being up there around the same as a PlayStation 5. And if it's starting to get the same games, now you're starting to get to that point where customers might not own both. But competition's good. I've said this many times. It's good to have competition in the market. So PS5 is irrelevant in Japan since Switch 1 Japan makes games for it because of the rest of the world, and that's changing too. Yeah, I mean, we all know PlayStation's really fell off in Japan for a lot of reasons. I don't need to get into them all here. I really wish this was on PS5 so it could be a quote-unquote great experience. It's kind of funny too, seeing like a sad face here because this is an amazing experience on Switch, but it's even better on Switch 2. They really updated this game for Switch 2, and so it actually runs really good. I don't really think being on PlayStation 5 is going to make Breath of the Wild magically run better, but there is that. I guess maybe you can get 120 FPS instead, but it's basically in practical 4K and 60 FPS. I don't know if it's true 4K. Might be DLSS upscale, but still looks really good on Switch 2. We come down here, PS is king of the living room, Switch rule handheld, PC for hardcore, Xbox, forget about it. Poor Xbox. Xbox, not even part of the conversation, getting some mudslinged just because they can. Here's the old pal, Risky. You guys might know Risky Kumar if you've been on my channel long enough. He's talking about how, they've been the market leader for 30 years. Not necessarily true. Nintendo was the market leader with Wii and DS and the market leader with Switch. So not 100% true they've been the market leader for 30 years, but they have been a market leader for a huge chunk of that time. As we move on here, not a single PS5 first party game that has the same level of interaction and advancements as Breath of the Wild from 2017. Oh my God, the pot shots are coming on Switch 1. Come on. Of course, they're not saying that. They're scared of but they should be. Well, I'm not a fan of Nintendo and PlayStation. I will credit them both if they need. And in this case, Sony are being arrogant with their statement here. And seriously, you don't need PS5 levels of power to make games look good or great on a big screen. And I will note, while I don't necessarily disagree with what Sony said, that games are best played on PlayStation on a TV. At least, in terms of home consoles, PC is probably the best overall. What I will say is, games are kind of hitting this point where, Cyberpunk runs pretty damn well in TV mode, docked mode on Switch 2. It's not 60 FPS, so it's not better than an Xbox Series S or better than PlayStation 5, of course, but it's good enough that I don't think most people would actually care that much. And I mean, like, most people being like general consumers. So that's kind of the thing, is like Switch 2 is encroaching on that. We're close enough that most people won't care. I actually played Hogwarts Legacy, the new version, on the TV. And I know the Digital Foundry's like, oh, this game's more comparable to PS4. That's fine. But I literally played it on my Switch 2, and then I switched over to my Xbox Series X and tried it out. And I gotta say, it looks pretty damn good on Switch 2. Like, yeah, obviously it looks great on Xbox Series X, but it looks so good on Switch 2 that I think for most people, that's a good enough experience. That's all Nintendo was really aiming for with docked mode is, hey, we're not going to be as powerful as a PS5. It's not going to be best played here. But if we can get close enough, that's really all that's needed, because most consumers don't actually care about being at that bleeding edge with like a PlayStation 5 Pro and stuff. So I got to say, like, they're both just trying different strategies, and both are successful, to be clear. Battery life on Switch 2 is way too short. That I do understand. I need to stop the comparison. Hardware doesn't mean shit most days. It's the games that make the console. Can agree there. This guy laughing, saying Sony is effed. I don't know why I have him muted or blocked or whatever, but shit happens. Gian says, from now on, I will buy multi-platform games on Switch 2 and not on PS5 unless the performance gap is too big. So I guess they should be concerned, unless I'm the only one, but I don't think so. And I do believe that, like, there's a lot of value in being able to take games on the go and play on your TV. So if performance is good enough, yeah, like, it might not look as pretty as PlayStation 5, but you get that additional benefit of, you get to just lift that thing up and take it with you. That is a massively appealing aspect of Switch and Switch 2. So you just being close enough might be enough for a lot of people. But I mean, they are different. There's a hybrid. The Japan numbers alone don't bother. 2.553 million Switch 2 got sold outside of Japan. PlayStation normally sells in the 1 million. I think this month they could go below 1 million, but next year they will close that with GTA 6. I actually am curious, when GTA 6 comes out, it will be a boost for PlayStation sales. I'm curious if Nintendo is going to have their own big, like, exclusive game coming out around the time GTA 6 does, to kind of counter the PlayStation 6 boom in sales, to kind of see, like, hey, you might have GTA 6 coming out, but maybe we have 3D Mario, and we're going to keep our system number one. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, competition is good, and I like seeing the companies go head to head at times. Like, it's hilarious that, like, every time a new big 3D Zelda game comes out lately, like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, well, Horizon came out both times, right? For Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, they both came out like in the same year. It's just absolutely wild to me, or like within a year of each other, that like those two franchises go head to head in like the same time period. It's crazy to me, and I like to see stuff like that. That's healthy competition. I am not insulting Horizon. I am not insulting Zelda, obviously. It's just really funny to me to watch those franchises go at it. Again, competition is good. I like this. I like the healthy competition. All it does is drive more and more consumer interest both ways. So, anyways, you can go on, and this thread goes on for a lot of stuff. But I wanted to end this talking about how I really feel. And thankfully, there's actually a comment that encapsulates the whole game industry. And I feel like this is one I want to put more emphasis on to end our video today. Because P.O. here put up this post that says, Nintendo Switch 2 is the biggest console launch in history. Sony just had their biggest year ever for PlayStation. Yep, they sold the most in the last fiscal year. Xbox and Microsoft has never had more games to put out. This is absolutely true. And Steam keeps breaking its own records and users. Also true. Can we just appreciate that gaming is doing good overall? Yeah. Like, people talk about industry crashes, People talk about, the concern over the rising budgets and all these games bombing like Concord. And some people think Marathon might be the next bomb, Anthem in the past. We talk about all these games that don't hit their mark, and even Assassin's Creed Shadows maybe not selling as well as they hoped, and Star Wars Outlaws missing marks. We can talk about like all this negative stuff in the industry layoffs, because factually the industry layoffs are a thing and games are bombing, but the overall industry is very healthy. And that's what I think gets overlooked among all of this. Like, for all the talk we talk about this bomb and that bomb and layoffs here, there's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle doing fantastic. There's Expedition 33 popping off. Mario Kart World doing extremely well, obviously here at launch, which I figured everyone kind of figured would happen, but there you go. It's doing really well. You see games like a lot of excitement for things like Ghost of Yotoi, and we see, Marvel Spider-Man 2 sell extremely well. And look, Call of Duty continues to just be a bestseller all the time. Fortnite continues to be extremely popular. Minecraft hasn't gone anywhere. People are excited for upcoming Silk Song, and that's been just hype for years. But the bottom line is that the industry is extremely healthy in spite of the industry layoffs and in spite of, these dozens of games that are just bombing at times, because all that's happened is the industry has shifted. It has gone away from, hey, you need to spend $400-500 million to make this big budget AAA game. Really, you can make something for significantly less that's even better and has just more passion put into it and less bugs and less concerns and less nickel and diming of consumers. We're seeing that, hey, everyone's being successful. This tweet offers some hard truths that people don't like to think about. But Switch 2 is very, very healthy right now. Like, it is off to, literally, it couldn't be off to a better start. Let's just be honest. PlayStation just had its biggest year. Xbox and Microsoft are now outputting games at a rate that we're not accustomed to because they bought their way to do it. But either way, hey, look, maybe their systems aren't selling as well, but they're about to partner with ROG for a PC handheld. And the bottom line is they're putting out a lot of games and they're seeing more revenue than they've ever seen. Now, again, they bought their way to that, but it doesn't matter. Point is, for Microsoft, they're in a very healthy place, even with their system not selling that well. And then Steam. Steam's absolutely been doing incredible. The PC space has been doing great. Obviously, we've seen the expansion with handheld PCs, but the bottom line is everything's going pretty well overall in the industry. For all of the negatives, there are so many more positives that just don't get enough credit. I just want to check the comments on this post as well quick here, because again, this is just our only topic for this video. Next year, also the biggest entertainment property release of all time in GTA 6. That's right. Probably the first $1 billion budget game coming out next year, but it's a franchise that can actually justify that budget just based on prior success. That's what's wild, is like, we talk about how, oh yeah, maybe the path to go isn't to keep overinflating budgets. And then the biggest release of next year is a massively inflated budget of $1 billion, but that's okay. It's different because that franchise has earned the ability to do that because GTA 5 was just so massive. They still fire a shit ton of employees and there's a bunch of canceled projects. That is factually a thing. Love my Switch 2. This person says, how's the battery? It's just a general question. And it says not a problem so far. That's good. It's good to see. It's gotten more expensive with the games in question. Most definitely not being worth the price. You end up having a slave to it all. Look, in the end, people are free to have their dissenting opinions, and there are tons of content creators out there. I'm not going to name anyone specific, but tons of them out there that literally thrive on the negativity of the industry. They talk about being pro-consumer and fighting for your rights. And look, it's fine. They can champion whatever they like. They spend a majority of their time destroying the industry and talking about all the things wrong with it, but barely ever championing all the things right about the industry. That's what's wild to me, is so much time is spent focusing on the negative that maybe we should just be amplifying the positives. Because if you amplify the positives, maybe the negatives will start to go away. I don't know. Maybe that's just my approach to life. I have chose to focus more on the positive side of things, and oftentimes the negative side just kind of starts to melt away or just become less relevant. I don't know. The gaming industry seems pretty healthy to me, and I'm curious what you guys think about this down in the comments below. Maybe I'm just naive, fanboy, Nintendo shill. I don't know, but I'm happy the whole industry seems to be doing well at the moment. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next video.